What's good, guys? Just Prince TV here. Um, Wanted to talk to you a little about none other than Tupac and a misconception of what Tupac really was. Okay, Tupac was the son of a Black Panther. Okay, he was raised, with that, that gene, that element, of pro black and peace, equality, and stuff like that. The Tupac that you saw on Death Row was not Tupac. Okay, that version of Tupac was a fabricated Tupac. Under the influence of guys that he was hanging around with, who were actually real gangsters, like Death Row and stuff like that. And this is why when he was in New York, he consistently got tested. People always wanted to test his gangsters, especially in New York, because New York was an aggressive city, and New York is the type of city, if you don't bring that type of energy, people gonna check you. Tupac was on some pro-blackness when he was in New York, so a lot of the G's tested him. And a lot of people back then thought Tupac was corny. You know, um, that's our conception in New York, man. You know what I mean? Back then, if you wasn't from New York, you didn't matter, because New York hip hop was like the foundation, the most important thing that you had to get approval of. And if we label you as whack and we coming from New York, you wasn't from none of the five boroughs, you didn't matter. That's how we looked at it back in the day, because hip hop was still in its early roots, second generation, and that's why Tupac was constantly keep talking about, hey, I'm battling for respect over here on the West Coast because you guys don't pay us no attention, you know. But I think he got under the influence, and um, he put himself in situations that he didn't have no business being in, even on the West Coast. You know, he was a set jumper. A guy from Baltimore, New York, Oakland, L.A. He was just jumping from city to city, repping different places, and um, he got caught up in a lot of negative lifestyles that each of those cities brought up in, but that had nothing to do with him. He wasn't a gangster. He wasn't a street cat, like a Mob Deep or even a Biggie. We came from neighborhoods that was really aggressive. Tupac didn't learn the streets too much because he was constantly on the move. Okay, he went from city to city, but he didn't really settle down and put that street work in. He was more of like a rap version of a Martin Luther King Jr. So his image got really stretched out into this whole thug life, mentality. But he wasn't that. But when you tell people that, they take it as a term of disrespect, like we're you know, disrespecting his legacy. So when I make videos on Tupac, I am no means necessarily disrespecting his legacy. Tupac as a man, I think he was a great guy. He stood for something. But I just got to tell the truth. He wasn't that gangster guy that you guys try to portray him to be. He did a lot of clout chasing. He did a lot of things that will be consumed or taken as fake. He clout chased a lot of rappers. Back then that term wasn't used, but he was a guy that's doing it. He called out a lot of rappers to stay relevant when they really had nothing to do with no beefs that he was involved in. You know, and he called out a lot of cats, especially from my neighborhood in Queens, that we wasn't really talking about Tupac like that. He wasn't on our radar. Now I know he had some dug out gangster songs, but we wasn't checking for him like that, man. He was making fun loving songs like I Get Around, talking about girls, or did he just talk his little serious joints, about teen pregnancy and all that other type of stuff, which is cool. But where we come from, my neighborhood we come from, we wasn't really into them type of songs. We was more into that gangster stuff. We was more into that street life stuff, because we came from the projects. Our mentality was different. Our mentality was like, what, son, you talk a good one, but you don't want it. You know what I'm saying? That's what we was on. We was in that Queensbridge zone. And anything else out of that, we wasn't really hearing that soft bubblegum type of style hip hop. That's what we viewed it as. So Tupac was always looked upon as like a very sensitive guy. Even dudes in New York, like the Wayland brothers, used to call Tupac the sensitive Doug. right? Sensitive Doug, all right? Because he was a little, quote unquote, attitude wise, was a little bit soft for New Yorkers. You know, I think that's why he blended in with the West Coast a little more, because West Coast was more laid back. Even though he's not from the West Coast, he was a set jumper, you know, just telling the truth. He felt like he was more at home because he could come to the West Coast and be accepted, something that he wasn't accepted in New York, because New York was too aggressive for him a little bit. So he moved over to another coast that he felt like he could trust, you know? And that was just the formation of the East Coast, West Coast beef. I'm gonna cover that in a different video. But I just wanted to verify when I talk about Tupac, so people won't think that I was hating on the guy or trying to downgrade his legacy. I'm just speaking facts on who Tupac really was. That Death Row Tupac is not Tupac. The one before that, Keep Your Head Up and all that other stuff, that's the real Tupac. Just Prince TV out. Peace.